I start by thanking IASCO, ICON, Asian Geriatric Oncology Society and BDR for giving us this opportunity to do this program. Without wasting much time, let us start with the first session. May I invite Dr. Sanjay Sharma up on the stage. He is chairperson for this important session. May I also invite the panelists, Dr. Ashay, a medical oncologist and hemato-oncologist, Dr. Chetna Bakshi, medical oncologist, Dr. Sahu, who has come from Bhopal, Mr. Ashish Parikh, and Dr. Naresh Piyani. Ashish is a stockbroker and chartered accountant, and Dr. Naresh Piyani is a pediatric neurosurgeon. So these two are different from what we normally see in the oncology community. So Sanjay, with your permission, can we start?
Thanks Purvish and the organizers to have given me this opportunity. I was wondering why he is calling me and asking me to attend. Then I realized I don't know even F of a finance. At least this will be a platform for me to learn from all these people. Thank you, Purvish.
Thank you. So Sanjay, you can open your safe and then make good use of the money. Instead of letting the money
No, nowadays nobody keeps it in the safe. They keep it a safe place.
Right. So for today's discussion, we will assume that this is the normal return expected from the investment. That is, Sensex will give about 15%, gold will give 8 or 9%, bank FD will give 8%, which is expected in the future. It's not there right now. And inflation is 7.6%. So that is the first presumption we are doing. The second presumption is we want to limit our discussion between 30th January and today. Finance is a big topic, otherwise we will never finish what we intend to do. So between 30th January and today, what is the situation, what are the circumstances and what we should be doing? Now this Ukraine war, why should we pay so much attention to it? If you look historically, between 1929 and 1968, there was only one real financial crisis, or two between these two. But in the 21st century, over the last 20 years, we've got the dot-com crash, the global financial crisis of 2008, the COVID pandemic, and now the Ukraine war. So what is expected is that almost 2/3 of all investors who are investing more than 75 lakhs will live through at least 3 financial crises. So whatever we are going to discuss today is really applicable in a real life basis. So on 30th January, this was the news that Kyiv urges Russia to pull back troops. So this was mounting up to this period. Actually, there was going to be war and it was impending that there would be a crisis. So I will ask each of the panelists to raise your hand to one of the 3 options. On 30th January, what did you do regarding your investment? If you did not change your investment strategy, raise your hand. So almost 5 people said no change in investment strategy. So the other 2 options are superfluous. So let's move to the next one. This is the impact of war as far as finances is concerned, both in the short term and the long term. The first column is dates. The second column is the event that actually happened. And then what happened to the investment over 1 month, 3 months, 6 months and 12 months. And you can clearly see here why everybody decided no change in policy is because the impact of that war is only for 1 month. And if you look at 3 months, 6 months and 12 months, it's already in the positive. So I think that is why everybody selected that there should be no change in investment strategy for a war-like situation. Now Ashay, let me ask you this question. Many a times, whenever there is an impending crisis, people rush to gold. So, do you think this is a guaranteed safe haven in circumstances?
Yes, sir. I mean, definitely, if you look at even the world over strategy, only the two currencies are there, in fact, a dollar and a gold. Means it will be across all international border, the prices are almost less same. And the thing is, when we have this war-like situation, definitely if we look in the last quarters, so the gold price is high. I always give a simple example. When my mom got married, it was I think 500 rupees per 10 grams. When I actually got the 10th standard, my father gifted me, it was 6,000 rupees per 10 grams. When I got married, it was 25,000. Today is 51,000, and when my daughter gets married, it will be 1 lakh plus. So I think it is one of the safest. Also, we can have like ETF, basically gold ETFs are also there, or even mining stocks, but these are a bit complex. Even I'm not really very, what you can say, well versed with that. But it makes a sense, because whenever we are having this, it is one of the commodity which can be.
So, on 25th February, if you look at 30th January, the gold price was 45,000. On 25th February, it was 51,930, that is a 15% increase. On 9th March, it was 54,810, which is the peak, that was at plus 29%. And on 24th March, it is the same as the first day of the war of 25th February. So, this is how rapidly the gold fluctuates. Ashish, do you have a different opinion about gold?
I think from a longer term perspective, gold will not give you better returns. Of course, what you said is true, that your mother's time and your marriage and your daughter's marriage, it increases. But just remember a simple formula. Remember the number 72. So for non-financial people, if you want to say that, if my money is doubling in, say, 4 years' time, then what is a compounded annual return? It is 72 divided by 4. So it's 18%. So if I'm saying that gold has doubled in 10 years, effectively it's 7% rate of return, while other assets will give you better rate of return. And if you'll see the gold charts also, basically gold was stable till the start of the pandemic. It was roughly around 30,000, roughly I'm saying. And especially it peaked, it really shot up when the second wave, the pandemic wave came. And after that, it has remained consistently in the range of above 45,000. Of course, the war is there. So I would say that if the war was happening in my country, then definitely I should move all the assets to gold. Because my own country's assets have no value. If I'm a Russian or if I'm from Ukraine, then obviously it has, the assets, financial assets or physical assets like real estate have no value. So in such case, yes. But if I'm sitting very far off, then at that case, if at all I want to do a short-term trading, then maybe 5%, 10% of my portfolio I could switch, but not as a long-term strategy.
Thank you. Sau, what about nickel? And there was a lot of discussion in our WhatsApp group.
Yeah.
So I thought, let me ask you this question. Nickel has actually increased by 111%.
No,
Yeah.
so actually I'm not a commodity expert, but the nickel thing shot up because Russia was the largest producer of nickel, and when the West banned Russia, so that's when the nickel shot up, and that's why the trading was stopped, because it shot up nearly $2,000, something like that.
Correct.
So, and second thing is that even Russia produces nickel, which is around 20%, which is used in batteries. So that is why the nickel thing happened. But as I think the nickel prices have also cooled down now, and it is now touching the pre-base. So that's, I think, all about nickel. Otherwise, we have expert who can speak more.
So on the left side is the conversation we had in our WhatsApp group about the surging prices of nickel. And on the right side, you see the contrast between two companies that are dealing with nickel. One is Hindustan Copper, which went up in the last 1 month or so by 3.04%, whereas Vedanta has got up by 20%. So, Sau, do you think there is a reason why Vedanta has shot up more than Hindustan Copper? Both of them are dealing with nickel.
I think, to my little knowledge, aluminium also is could be one of the factors why Vedanta is shooting up nicely, and all the aluminium equity stocks have gone up. And
for the nickel thing, I'd like to tell you that this was a short squeeze that had happened at London Exchange, actually, Metal Exchange, where one of a big Chinese company had shorted the nickel and they had to cover it, so it shot up. So this is one unusual market phenomena that happens. So but it will not be sustainable. It came down and again it is shooting up. For Vedanta, even though the promoter is not one of the best of the thing, but apparently he is going to get into semiconductor things.
Right.
And that is one of the reason why it is, the Vedanta is on premium actually.
So semiconductors, electric batteries for electric vehicles are important for nickel, and because as Sao mentioned, Russia is providing 17% of top quality nickel. So there was a global shortage of nickel. But Vedanta got the best of it because they have recently bought over the company from Goa which is mining nickel, as well as they have companies outside India where they are mining nickel. So because they have a larger proportion of access to raw material for nickel, therefore it shot up more than the other companies. Naresh, coming to you, will selling spree of FIIs in the Indian market impact your decision? And why I'm asking is because over the last 6 months, 29 billion US dollars have been taken out of India by the foreign investors.
Sir, we have to look into few angles, to understand why FFIs are selling and how it would impact our own decision making. One thing is for sure that FFIs have the top brains working for them. So they are not fooled to ignore Indian market, where India is going to be a 5 trillion economy, and that is when historically things have been seen that is when the most boom in the market happens actually.
Yes.
Now the reason why they are selling, we don't know exactly, but yes, they have got in early and they are booking profit, There was a government circular that there would be a tax on the long-term equity gains and all those stuff. So they want to show their muscle power actually.
But will that change your investment decision?
No, not at all. I am bullish on India actually.
Right.
So, and the good thing is that with the mature retail investors and DIIs, we are able to stop that actually.
Excellent. Chetna, can I ask you this question? What if I'm expecting the market to go down, maybe in the short term, but I don't want to sell just now?
So ideally, one should not be selling only, sir.
Right.
Why one should sell in a market which is going down?
Yes.
In fact, this is the opportunity to buy. So one has to buy on deep. And as you only showed that, we always get a V-shaped recovery after any crisis.
Correct.
Whether it's a war or whether it is COVID or whatever, there is always a recovery. Only thing is one has to have little patience. So what market wants is patience and discipline, not panicking. If you panic and sell, then you will always sell in loss. So one should not sell, and I think you have written also for every correction, you should decide one amount and you should keep on buying on sale.
Right, excellent. Sanjay?
No, I was reading, sorry.
No, sir, I'm done.
I was reading somewhere and they did a recent survey of almost about 1.2 billion people. And out of which about 82,000 people probably in a panic in such situations sold their cells. And their loss was again more than 82 or 85,000 crores. So what she rightly said, that as they go down, and good stock if you sell more or more quickly, which you are worried you have you holding it at a good price, I think is all mistake. And at least in India today, good stocks will persistently remain high and should not be in a hurry to sell them.
Absolutely, perfect. Ashish, should we be reshuffling? This is short term, we are not talking about long term. We are expecting a dip and then it's going to go up. Should I do reshuffling or not?
See, basically in the short term, if you see whenever a market falls down, it is always the mid cap and the small cap which falls the maximum, and the large cap falls the least. So if you'll see over the last 3 months, I'm talking of mutual funds. So if you see over the last 3 months, large and mid cap has fallen by 1.83%, flexi cap 2.11%, mid cap 2.18%, and small cap 2.45%. While the pure large cap has fallen by only 0.15%. So what we could do in a short term is that I'm answering the third question and first question combined. As if you are having SIPs, then at least at a time when there's a market crisis and markets are going down, which it has been basically going for the last 3 months, at that time you should pause SIPs for mid cap and small cap. And you should continue with your SIPs or maybe switch over to SIPs of large cap. Why you should continue and not totally pause is if you're talking of the Sensex, which is, I have the numbers here from 1st of February or 30th January, because that's the cutoff point, till yesterday. So if you'll see on 28th of January, which was a trading day before 30th January, the Sensex closed at 57,200. On 25th March, which is Friday, it has closed as 57,362. So in this war-like scenario, it has gone up by 162 points, basically. So there is no point pausing. And in this period, on one day, the Sensex came down to 52,842. That is on 7th March. So if we totally stop the SIPs, then we are going to miss those bottoms. So, I mean, at least I can never figure out when the market is going to turn. There may be some experts who have some magic formula, but at least I don't know. So I would advise that you continue with your SIPs, but definitely you pause or switch from smaller cap or riskier SIPs to large cap SIPs. And if you wish and you are sitting on a lot of profits, then maybe 5 to 10% you could sell off and remain in cash so that you can invest when the market falls down. That you could do. And as far as debt is concerned, because the interest rates are going up, it is ideal to not lock in any debt, either mutual fund or even direct investment for a longer tenure. So even if you have to put FDs, though the FD rate for 3 months is lower, please put in 3 months, because when it goes up, then you lock in for 3 years or 5 years. And same way, if you have mutual funds of debt, then switch over from longer tenure to shorter tenure. So the longer tenure has actually performed worst. The shorter tenure has given you this equivalent to your saving bank interest, roughly only 3%. That's what it is.
Right. Naresh, coming back to you. And this is, you cannot access this anywhere on the net, okay? This is his own proprietary algorithm that he has developed. So Naresh, please walk us through this.
Actually, the COVID crisis brought some talent in myself, actually. I was trying to explore things. And what we have in market right now is something called relative strength that compares the return of any stock or sector against index. The main purpose of our trading and investing is to get more return than index. If we cannot beat that, better give our funds to a mutual fund manager or just put it in index, So now we need to have some formula where we can know which sector is leading, number one. Number two, in the sector as well, it is not number one, number two, number three companies that take the lead, Might be 6th company or 7th company by their market cap would be taking the lead. And luckily, with the grace of God, I could crack in a difficult formula. And this what you see is a trading view visualization, but the data that comes is too huge. But here, like this is a bird eye view where you can see, the orange color, CNX metal is performing more than Nifty since 7th of March actually 28th of February actually. Right. That was the time. So if I know that and if I see the metal sectors, probably 2 or 3 stocks are performing much better than that. So I don't have to look into the market, what is happening with FFI, what is happening with the market, what is happening in Ukraine. There's none of my business. I just go by the price and the price takes me. And this is one of the ways of negating all the fundamental analysis, all the chart pattern, all the candlestick pattern, demand zone, supply zone, trend lines, everything, It is just a nutshell where you see this and like a 10th standard guy also can look into the colors and make out, what is what.
So Naresh, we'll expect to do a dedicated session.
Yeah. This actually, this
particular thing.
This is a proprietary thing actually. I've still not revealed. We have a closed WhatsApp group where we keep on discussing things, and this is something that can empower a person actually.
So this is, sorry, this is a daily chart, मतलब आप
Yes.
इसको daily बनाते हैं?
Yes. नहीं daily नहीं. Actually होता क्या है? नहीं. Actually there is a big problem actually with the persons actually. The thing is that this chart is on daily framework. If I put the same chart in weekly framework, it becomes an investing. If I put this chart in 5 minutes or 15 minutes, it becomes an intraday. So it is, the formula is the same. The only time frame you change to suit your own personality and your expectations, you know.
So according to this, we should still buy metals.
Yes. Now there are few things actually, you know. The metal is at peak. If till the time, you know, my idea is to invest into the top 2 sectors, and definitely metals and energy are doing good. For past 2 days, you know, the CNX media is running very fast. So that also this thing captures. And let's see. The
JP, there's a mic behind.
Yes.
If you can go to the mic.
सब कुछ है. In fact, in media, if you see the various sectors, you know, NDTV is doing the biggest momentum actually. Even though it's a very small company and doesn't get the media attention. And this chart negates everything. Means वो क्या करता है, क्या नहीं करता है, कुछ लेना देना नहीं.
So Dr. Biyani,
sir.
thank you. Basically, though I am a Agarwal, maybe genes are maybe in the same quality, but my mind generally, I have made a block probably for myself, you know.
Correct.
So first, some basics I want to understand from you. This was too in-depth neuronal near the basal ganglion.
Correct.
So what I want to understand, what is the basic etiquette, you know, or a discipline a physician should have when they are investing? That is one. Second is the law of averages many times don't, to Dr. Parikh also, sir.
JP, can I
Two
ask
only,
you
sir.
to take this offline, because we are focusing on the 30th January to today.
So, but I think
The principle of thing, we'll take it off. We'll have a separate program for that. Ashish, today in the WhatsApp group there was a discussion about Ruchi Soya and how it is, hoodwinking everybody. The shareholding pattern of Ruchi Soya is that 99% is with promoters. Okay. So Ashish, is it important for us to look at the shareholding pattern for any company before investing?
When you look at shareholding pattern, you have to look at the change in shareholding pattern. That gives you more of a clue than compared to anything else.
Right.
As per SEBI regulations, promoters cannot hold more than 75%. So when they are talking 99%, there has to be something wrong there. And if you will see that if promoters holding is consistently coming down, that sometimes gives a clue. In the sense when before Satyam fiasco happened and it came out, Mr. Raju's holding was consistently coming down. So obviously he was selling, he knew something, the whole world did not know. Another important factor to see is what is the amount, what is the quantum of pledging of the promoter shares, because that data is also available. So if a lot of promoter shares are pledged to somebody to borrow money, that gives an indication that the promoters and the group obviously are in financial crisis. And the retail investors, as doctor said, have really come up. The number of retail accounts have gone up. The retail investors flow into the mutual funds is also up. And if there's a large FII holding, then if they sell, then obviously there will be more swing in the pricing as compared to when the retail investors is there.
So now we know what happened to Paytm, because the promoters have 0% shares in Paytm now.
Can I just ask you
Yeah,
a question?
yeah.
Ashish?
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about obviously an impact of a war and in which a lot of things are happening. Why probably I believe, and that is one of the reasons why you have started with say 57 and you were back and above 57. For 2-3 reasons, and I correct me if I'm wrong, I mean that's what my understanding, that India doesn't lose too much from Russia except the defense thing. But now since Atmanirbhar Bharat program is on, they believe there's all these metal stocks and all are going up because of the defense thing. As he rightly mentioned, nickel is high and all metals because of now all electric cars are being manufactured in India. So that is why sustained and probably it has gone up. And more importantly, I was reading somewhere, and I don't know whether it is right or wrong, but you get China plus something, which is people want to exclude China, and during this period, I think that phenomena worked a little better for the sustenance of the some stocks, which probably like chemicals. If I'm not wrong, there is some, and even the the things like Dixon has gone up, or the RT has gone up, and the chemical or some nitrate, the Deepak nitrate, they've all gone up. It's probably because of this manufacturing of these pharmaceutical companies which probably were importing from China. That it's a sustainable benefited during this period of time.
Yes, yes, definitely. This gives an opportunity to India. The biggest downside for India in this war is the increased crude oil prices, which is a huge impact.
So much. Because we don't get much price from
No,
Russia.
it's not a question of Russia. The whole price in the world has gone up, and India is importing 70% of its crude. So that's a huge foreign exchange outflow. Though now we are buying some Russian crude at a discount, but still the average price which we are going to pay is going to be higher than what we are paying earlier. And crude oil price going up means there is going to be inflation all around. Once there is inflation, then there is a risk of some amount of demand recession. So there is a challenge, but the benefit for India is that we have a large local market. We also have started a lot of manufacturing. And considering this phenomena, in fact, we will now be exporting wheat in large numbers because the prices are going up.
Russia doesn't produce
Ukraine produces almost 20% of the world's wheat export is through Ukraine. So we have opportunities. It's not that we don't have opportunities. In the long run, of course, I'm sure we'll do well.
Right. Ketna. What is the importance of knowing about daily moving averages and whether it is 21 days, 50 days or 200 days?
So moving average is one of the important technical indicator. I'm using it always when I buy and sell that stocks. Basically, it is just an average of last, like if you are saying 21 days moving average means average of the last 21 days. If you are saying 50 days, in average of last 50 days. How it helps is, it just reduces the noise. So it's very easy for us to understand. Like for example, now there's a dip. So if you have a stock which if you want to invest for a long term and markets are falling, you don't know when to buy. So we wait. If market is falling very rapidly, we wait till that stock comes up to the 200 DMA at least, and then we start buying.
Right.
So that's how it helps. If it's a shorter duration, it helps for a shorter trading, like a swing trading, positional trading for 5-10 days. If for 200 DMA, I think it is important for a long-term investors.
Fantastic. What about indirect impact? And so I'll come back to you with the example of sugar. There are so many companies that are involved in the sugar market, and if you look at 1 month change or 2 years change, they've all been going up, really speaking. And if you look at this example, what happened in the last from 30th January to yesterday, what has happened? Plus 96 is the Nifty, okay? And that is, it is not last 3 months, it is from 2020 onwards. Okay, Nifty has gone up by 96%. And there are 3 sugar companies. One has gone up by 167%, second has gone up by 447%, and another has gone up by 728. And the names are Balram Chini, Ugar Sugar and Bal Bharat. How will you do commodities investment with something like sugar?
Sir, I don't, but I have very sweet memories of sugar. I sold 2 days back and made a handsome profit, 70%. So, and I
can answer that.
I did that because government banned export, and I believe I'll get good opportunity to re-enter at a good price. And I think if the experts are there, and I think there will be a dip for little more time, and then I can re-enter. That's my thought with my short practice. So memories are good, but they can.
So Sanjay and Chetna.
Actually, I think sugar went up because of that ethyl alcohol thing also. Yeah, right. Because government was saying that they wanted to mix in that. Yes, right. That was the reason. Immediately, all these industries they went up.
Likely to go up more and more because now.
Not in short term.
So in other words, besides the war, sugar has been affected by other factors. Government policy. It has got nothing to do with the war that is happening. Ashay, What about Bank Nifty?
Yeah, definitely in the war situation, the bank nifty, I mean, even if you have seen that R index, it is the highest hit because, they banned SWIFT basically. So that is what is about banking transactions and globally it has affected. So I think the banking sector is the least to look at during the war crisis.
Right, right. What about day trading and switch trading? Chetna, shall I start with you, switch trading?
Switch means swing trading.
Swing,
It's a short-term trading. Means the question is whether one should do it in war times or not.
Yeah.
I would not. Might as well just sit
Just
tight.
sit
Sit tight. This is going to go away maybe for a month or so. Put your money in long-term stocks and sit tight. Okay. You may get little more money if you put in aluminium. Maybe I got a lot of money in Hindalco and Nalco, but I will not advise that if you do not know much about the stock market.
Any thoughts?
Sir, I have a different view of point actually. The thing is that we are all doctors and our primary profession is medical.
Correct.
And day trading is like playing an international chess game with the grandmasters. And you are bound to lose that actually. So unless you have a tool and knowledge and dedication, better
out of it.
to be away from it and try to develop your own edge actually.
Right. Now we are only 1 minute left. So one sentence from each of you as a final mark. Ashay, let's start with you. This is alphabetical order.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Dr. Parikh has rightly said, so gold is definitely commodity, and as a fundamentals, you should have 10 to 15% only in gold. Any in the long term equity is going to be a long term gainer. So just sit tight, and whichever the bigger stocks we are planning to buy, I think this is the time you can back those stocks. That's the only thing which I can say.
Ashish?
Yeah, so just want to say that basically you should ignore the noise at a time of war or at a time of crisis. Just remember this one statement that when everybody is fearful, you should be greedy, and when everybody is greedy, you should be fearful.
Yeah, right.
Chetna.
So one has to buy and not sell and don't panic.
Right.
No panic.
Naresh?
I would say that develop your own edge actually. Forget about listening to the noise of the market and CNBC and other social media platforms.
Right.
And that is going to sustain. The problem with doctors is that we have been told and labeled that you should not be doing any financial things. And that's a big stigmata, Once you tell them that you have a talent to do that, I'm sure, we are the best of the IQs that we went through the 12th standard entrance exams. So this is not a big nut to crack actually. We handle day in and day out more complicated problems.
Very true.
The problem is that we don't have a discipline, we don't have a psychology out of it, and nobody teaches us actually.
Sao?
For me, this last 1 year learning has been go beyond FDs and government bonds. They are just not good enough. And be a long-term investor. I do not do day trading because I don't have the time. And I bought quite good amounts during the dip. So I wait for opportunities like the adversities that go in the world and then buy at that time. And the surge has been very fast. So that's the only advice. Buy on every dip, and larger the dip, buy on that.
Sanjay, let's have your concluding remarks.
I think fantastic discussions. I've learned quite a lot. And this picture shows that. What other people said, that sit tight, but buy when everything is low. And Ashish very rightly put, intelligentsia is that when everybody is saying happy, you should, sell it. But when you are down, other people are down and they are worried about selling a good thing, hold them and do well. Thank you very much, Purvish. It was a very nicely compiled discussion, and I'm sure tomorrow everybody will do very well in stock market.
Thank you very much.
So it's your pen, right?
Right.
So I'll just take it out.
Yeah. So the next session is role of S1 in gastric cancer. Our chairperson is none other than Dr. S.H. Advani. किधर है?
So this is us.
Gastric cancer. Vamshi.
Dr. Vamshi.
Yeah. And the moderator is Dr. Vamshi, Krishna, who's come from Hyderabad. Please come here. Aja. Thank you, sir.
No, sir. I had never used it. Just waiting. Sure, sir. Should I call, sir? Sir, I'll go ahead and call the panelist. I'll call the panelist, sir. Good afternoon, everyone. It's nice to be back on a podium after almost 2 years. I think the last physical meeting I did outside Hyderabad was March first week of 2020. So 2 years and counting. So it's nice to be here. This meeting, as the agenda said, it was supposed to be done by Viraj, but Viraj has asked me, we exchanged roles in this meeting. I request my panelists to please come on the stage, Dr. Nilesh Lokeshwar, Dr. Sharmila Agarwal, Dr. Fahad, Dr. Vashisht Manyar, Dr. Indu, Dr. Shivam Shingla, and Dr. Mubarakunisa. So, large panel, and we have around 35-40 minutes to discuss. Dr. Viraj is also part of my panel, I forgot. I guess we might need a couple more chairs here, or somebody can. Right. Okay, so I will just. So can we start the slides, please? Right. So my talk would be on S1 in gastric cancer. When I got this lecture from Viraj and he asked me to do it, and I was like, S1 in gastric cancer, I started reading, and I thought, like they say, Hindi mein bakra bana diya mujhe. There's nothing that I can talk about it much. But then I realized, there's something to talk about. Maybe he was talking about this goat, the greatest of all time. I'll take it as a left-handed compliment from Viraj and then try to do this session for today. Right. So understanding S1. Now S1 normally works in a kind of a different way to our usual 5FU. This is how 5FU works. 5FU is converted into DUMP, FDUMP, which has bone marrow toxicity, GI toxicity, and also has your anti-tumor effect. Majority of 5FU gets converted by DPD, so that kind of does not, that means most of your 5FU is actually gone off into that kind of group. So if you have a Tegafur, which is similar to 5FU, a CDHP which would block your DPD, thereby increasing the amount of active agent, and a drug which would reduce your GI toxicity, that is when you get S1. So that combination is S1, and that is why you will get more activity with more bone marrow toxicity but less GI toxicity. Right? This is how S1 works. So by the way, thanks to Viraj for this slide. This is his slide. So thanks to him for that. So coming to my panel, thoughts on the action of S1. Vashisht, you are at one corner, unfortunately, so you get to start. What do you think? How does this work? What this action? Do you think it will be a good action? Will it improve 5FU?
It seems to be significantly a better designed molecule, than the other routine 5FU that we've been using. So yes, it seems to be more selective in terms of the efficacy that we wish, avoiding the major dose-limiting side effect of capecitabine, which is bothersome hand-foot syndrome.
Okay. Dr. Nilesh, do you agree? What do you think? The GI toxicity will be less, slightly less hand-foot?
So, FU remains a standard and a very good molecule. Unfortunately, just about 2 or 3% of it is really reaching the cells, and that is mainly because of DPD. So any modality that modifies that activity actually will enhance its efficacy while maintaining or giving minimal side effects. So the advantage of this molecule, as I see it in this combination, is lesser toxicity while maintaining an equipotent or a better efficacy.
Absolutely. So I think that's how S1 works, and I think that is something which over the next few months you are going to be repeated again and again and told how S1 works. This is basically, like all the panelists are saying, a method wherein you get all the good effects of S5FU without the side effects. So that's what S1 is all about. Dr. Viraj, we do get a lot of other drugs in India which are like only Tegafur. So that doesn't actually have the DPD inhibitor in it. Do you think a Tegafur Uracil is same as this, or do you think this would be better?
So Uracil is also a DPD inhibitor, but it only inhibits about 20 to 30%, while CDHP is a better version of Uracil, and it inhibits almost 70 to 80% of DPD. Of course, by increasing more GI toxicity, and that's how OXO comes into picture. So UFT, what we have is in India right now, is the same mechanism, but not a powerful DPD inhibitor.
So again, something that is important for us to know, because we keep talking of Tegafur and saying it's the same as S1, and again, this is kind of marketing, but that's what most medical oncologists, especially if you're, if you read about it, you realize that S1 is probably going to be a game changer. That is if you believe in the S1 itself. At least this is different from what is. Let's just start with a small case. A 50-year-old gentleman coming with abdominal pain, acidity, found to have a gastric antral ulcer, poorly differentiated adenoCA, PET scan done showing gastric mass with few doubtful perigastric nodes. Should we do a PET scan on? Let's not go there. Then distal gastrectomy, D2 lymph nodal dissection done, and HPE showed poorly differentiated adenoCA, 8/19 lymph nodes positive, right? So for the moment, let's just take it that this is what has been done. Let's not argue of what should have been done, but starting this way, starting from Dr. Indu. What next in such a patient? Patient has come to you with a surgery done. Let's not argue as to why it was done or what should have been done. What next? A D2 dissection done.
This patient should go for adjuvant chemotherapy.
Absolutely.
And it should be the combination of platinum and 5-fluoropyrimidine.
Absolutely. Dr. Sharvila, I guess next.
I will
You're
say
Dr.
that.
Okay,
Yeah,
I'm sorry. I personally don't know. I think both of you. Dr. Makronisa. Yes, please tell.
Yeah, definitely adjuvant chemotherapy. As she said, 5FU and platinum-based combination, and docetaxel also. If you're thinking
Docetaxel. So you would like to go for a triplet?
Yes.
So adjuvant triplet?
Yes.
Okay. Any reason why an adjuvant triplet versus a doublet?
It's a nodal positive N2 disease, definitely higher risk of relapse.
So higher risk, so you want to go for a triplet. Okay. Dr. Sharmila, what would be your plan?
I would say adjuvant chemotherapy, and also at some course to add with adjuvant chemoradiation.
Chemoradiation, okay. So we are having
in
a
view
full
of the
spectrum.
node positive disease.
Okay, okay, fair enough. What about monotherapy? Dr. Sharmila, monotherapy or anyone, either of you?
Whatever data I have just read, it's with the Japanese trials, wherein they are advising almost a year of S1 as adjuvant treatment.
So that's why I asked this question. I mean, in current practice, without S1, are we advising monotherapy to anybody? Dr. Fahad, any patient where you would say, let's just give a monotherapy with 5-fluorochlorin, monotherapy with capstabine?
No.
Is that at all there, anyone?
No, not in my practice for sure.
Sure.
I would prefer a doublet regimen. I would disagree with Dr. Sharmila ma'am. It's been a D2 lymphadenectomy.
Yes, a D2 lymphadenectomy.
The role of adjuvant chemoradiation is reserved when there is less than D2
So
detection.
that's the question I have put next, role of radiotherapy. We do have a radiation oncologist in the team. We will not go too much into this detail, because I think if we go down that rabbit hole, we are never going to come out. Should we give or not give this thing? But yes, role of radiation is, well, a bit controversial after all the studies have come out, whether to give it or not give it. But point taken, note positive, you might want to be using it. So let me now come to the important question. Neoadjuvant. Is that a role for neoadjuvant in all stomach cancers nowadays? Would you say all stomach should go for a neoadjuvant?
If there is no contraindication, I think we are now giving FLOT to most of our patients, because
so that's why I said, where
good.
would you not give a neoadjuvant treatment? Would you give neoadjuvant to everybody in stomach?
Early cancer.
Early cancers, T1, T2, no role.
T2 and
T1,
above.
T2 and 0, there is no role of
All
neoadjuvant.
right. So the why reason again I'm asking, we get these PET scan reports, we get these CT reports, few doubtful perigastric nodes seen. Would that be an area where you would still give a neoadjuvant? Because let's face it, staging wise, doing a EUS to find out the thickness is something not done on a routine basis. I come from a very specialized gastro, we have very specialized gastro department, even they don't do that. So where would you give or not give? Vashisht, all cases should go for a neoadjuvant, or would you say some cases should go for neoadjuvant?
Vamshi, I believe PET is not a great diagnostic modality, and if I had all the resources for my patient, I would insist on a diagnostic lab. Because a large number of these patients who have these poorly differentiated malignancies with few perigastric lymph nodes might even harbor peritoneal metastasis.
Fair enough.
About 25 to 30%, may be significantly upstaged. I believe in such patients where the disease is very morbid, the therapy is very morbid, I think the intent of treatment should be very clear.
Okay.
So staging lab if it is possible.
Staging lab. Okay. Dr. Nilesh, I mean, you are probably the senior most person on stage. How many patients go for a diagnostic lab and come out without a surgery getting done? Provided they don't have a peritoneal met, will they get a surgery done, or will they just get the surgery done and then you get these 8 nodes positive?
That depends on what kind of an institute you are working and whether you're in a good team or not. If you are in a good team where you have a good correlation, then that definitely happens if you do a diagnostic lab and then proceed either for NACT or for surgery. And I would restrict my, in my center, by and large, patients who have got nodal disease on PET or suspected nodal disease will undergo an NACT. T1, T2 will definitely not undergo NACT.
Perfect. So again, the reason I'm bringing about this is again that which regimens we use. Dr. Indu, FLOT versus EOX.
So I'll be more comfortable using FLOT
FLOT.
regime.
So I think, over the last few years, again, my surgical colleagues often remind me that we don't actually have a trial which has tried surgery versus adjuvant versus neoadjuvant followed by surgery and perioperative. There is no such trial. All the trials are either perioperative versus different perioperative. Yes, Viraj, you disagree.
Yes. So in my center, apart from patients who have gastric outlet obstruction, usually everybody goes for DLAP and perioperative chemotherapy. We have 2 large phase 3 trials from Asia. One is Prodigy, which we discussed, which says that about 5 to 6% of DFS advantage in a perioperative setting versus an adjuvant setting.
Okay,
Although
fine.
no
Again, the
Western
reason
data,
why
but we have Asian.
the reason why I'm bringing about this is what drugs will be used and how we are going to place S1 in this setting. That's what I'm leading up to. So this is what we are doing today. So we establish what we do and then we take it from what we do next. Now this is what the NCCN says. Again, not that we have to follow NCCN only, but NCCN does say that if you have a medically fit, potentially resectable or unresectable, do a laparoscopy with cytology, which is a category 2B, by the way. It is not a recommendation. It is not a standard of care. That's why probably a lot of surgeons don't really push for it. Do an MDT if preferred and then go for the usual regimens. So coming to Dr. Fahad, your usual regimens that we use, Capox, Folfox, paclitaxel, Carbo and FLOT.
So in the perioperative setting?
This will be adjuvant setting or perioperative setting.
So adjuvant, it's usually Capox.
Right.
That's what I prefer.
And perioperative, it will be?
It's FLOT now.
Right. I'm a little, kind of just a maybe philosophical discussion. Why this discrepancy? No? Madam was saying, why not give FLOT to everyone in adjuvant as well if you're having the same concept?
So it's
Dr. Nilesh, yes.
The other way, it's sometimes difficult to give Capox in the neoadjuvant setting and therefore FLOT is preferred because you don't have a oral drug that is required in some of these patients. The only thing about FLOT is there's no data for it. And because of the classic trial, we are all comfortable using 8 cycles of Capox for all patients.
True. That's where the confusion comes. We want to give the best right up front. You're giving FLOT up front and later, but then you say FLOT later cannot be given in almost 30-40% of patients. So maybe just give Capox, but don't give Capox pre-op. This is the confusions that a medical oncologist faces. But again, coming to what probably we are going to be discussing today, these are the major trials in the adjuvant setting. You have the ARTIST, the Classic, the ARTIST-2. I'm not going into any detail here because stomach is not what we are going to be discussing today. Right. Now this is what the NCCN again says. Now in adjuvant, almost everywhere they have given 2 drugs only. There is no role for triplet as of now. Fluoropyrimidine plus capecitabine or chemotherapy, which will be again a doublet. That's what is the general recommendation. So starting now with Dr. Where would you place S1 in this scenario now? Adjuvant stomach.
So patients who have been optimally dissected for D2 and node positive and above T3 and 0, I think S1 would be discussed if we have an availability.
No, we have availability. I mean,
So,
I assume
yeah.
that today's meeting is because we are going to have availability.
So S1
right?
would be discussed
So,
in all patients with or without docetaxel, depending upon
S1
the
with or
performance
without
status.
docetaxel, you would want to give for all patients who are having this, who are having a stomach resected. Okay, excellent. So I think that sets the tone for the rest of the panel. Dr. Vashisht, to Monday morning or to today's Sunday, yeah, Monday morning, you get the company saying that we have stocks available. Next patient, would you offer S1? And where would you offer it?
So predominantly the data for S1 comes from the Japanese oncology group trial, and they have what they believe is category 1 recommendation of using S1 plus platinum in both recommended and conditioned recommendations. So they have two types of recommendations, like we have NCCN category 1, 2A and 2B. In Japanese oncology trials, they have all recommended and conditioned recommended. Condition would include people's PS, financial toxicity and all of it.
Okay.
And in both of them, the first choice is platinum plus S1. So I'll be very honest, my personal experience with S1 is extremely limited to only a few patients in the metastatic setting. But I would be quite excited about the way the drug acts, and yes, it sounds very interesting. Very eager and tempted to use it.
Yeah.
Do we have any data for S1 in the Indian population or for that matter Western
We will discuss that, Dr. Amol. I am discussing it one by one.
I think there is no approval also by US FDA till date for S1.
I will probably ask FDA, US FDA, no. As far as I know, no. US FDA, no. Indian FDA, I guess that the company can tell us what approval they have taken for launching it in India. I myself don't know, I'm experienced. Right, Dr. Nilesh.
So data-wise, the ARTIST-2 is a very interesting trial with good results, but there are a few limitations I have with this drug, so it's not going to be my Monday morning practice for sure.
Okay.
One reason is because the drug is still not available. The second important reason is we really don't know what the dosing is. It's such a wide dosing. In the Caucasians, you use a dose of 40 milligrams. In the Japanese, you use 60 to 80 BD.
Yes.
And in somewhere, you use 4 versus 2 and 3 versus 2. So I would actually be more comfortable if there is some kind of a phase 3 study that is done in India, which will help us
decide a dose designing. So basically a dose designing study to say how Indians would cooperate.
So how would you consider yourself Chinese?
Dr. Vikas, that was going to be my next question. I wanted to put a map, but I forgot. But basically we are closer probably geographically to Japan, Korea and those countries. We consider ourselves closer to the West. Would you think that this works in India as well? Because
Exactly. So, like he said, the dose in Japan, which is the approved, is 60 to 80, and the 50 dose which MD Anderson used failed. So we don't know, first of all, what's the dose?
Yes.
What's the schedule? 4 weeks
Two.
on, 2
4
weeks
2.
off. There is a 1 week on, 1 week off, which is very well approved now in US. So, like he said, I would definitely not use it in adjuvant setting. Metastatic setting, I would start using it.
Okay, very good. Dr. Indu, adjuvant setting, it's again a tablet. You're using capstabine with oxaliplatin, you're comfortable. So logically, an oral tablet should not be much of a problem. But what do you think of the data, whatever is available? Is it a good enough data for us to start pushing for S1 or?
We have studies from Japan, and like the results are good. Like results are encouraging, I will say. But I agree with my other panelists that dosing is definitely going to be a problem in Indian patients because it is variable. Another thing, if we are talking about the combination with either platinum or with Taxane along with S1, then again we don't have a fixed dose so far, even for single agent. So dosing is going to be a problem, and but the data is encouraging.
Okay, Dr. Mubarakuni sir. I mean, for me, this study, they said it's a phase 3 randomized trial using adjuvant with S1 alone. This is where the monotherapy concept came in, which is why I was asking. Actually, monotherapy with S1 is recommended in Japan as 1 year of adjuvant monotherapy. And the trial they have used is a monotherapy versus surgery alone. So basically, no adjuvant versus adjuvant, and then you approve it for 1 year. Your hazard ratio of 0.669, yeah, it is separating nicely, but is it a right trial?
See the results, you don't get stage 2 plus stage 3 gastric cancer survival, surgery alone 61%. Okay. Despite of D2 lymph node dissection.
5-year OS survival.
Yeah, this was 5-year OS was not actually, it was skeptical. I mean, if you extrapolate to the entire world data, you don't get 61% 5-year OS only with surgery. So there were doubts about the study.
So my question really relates more to not the surgery arm alone, but would you say surgery alone is at all an option?
No,
Viraj,
no, it's unethical.
So classic trial based on which we are taking K-POX as standard has also surgery alone arm, and that is also 60 to 65%. So at that time, there was questions whether any adjuvant helps. So I don't think so at that time it was unethical.
No, but in today's world, would you agree with an
Of
S1
course,
monotherapy
I would like
alone?
to pitch it against, like Vashi said, with a doublet, platinum agent.
So S1 alone, would it be an option for any of us, or would we combine it with a cisplatin? You know, that's where really I want to know the thoughts of the panel, because I don't know, single
so in
agent.
metastatic we have data.
Not
S1,
metastatic, I'm talking adjuvant here.
We don't have data yet.
We don't. Yes.
There is a S1 plus docetaxel data for
Yes,
adjuvant.
combination,
Yeah,
but not for a single agent. That's what I was trying to find out. That would anyone be still because like I said, Japanese have approved it for 1 year. You know, based on whatever their wisdom is, they have approved it. Yes. It's the standard of care, S1 monotherapy. So I'm not sure. I would really recommend it. Dr. Sharmila, your take on it. Would you agree with the 1 year?
First of all, Japanese
Yes,
surgeons are too good to get this data.
Oh, so it's the fault of the medical office here. We should agree only one, the surgeons are not good enough. Okay, surgeons in the hall, please note.
Another thing. Another thing is.
Yes, Dr.
Pharmacokinetic profile of S1 in Japanese population is totally different.
From what? From Indian? We don't know the Indian data. That's exactly what Dr. Amol was asking us. What is the Indian data?
Yeah.
We don't know the Indian data.
Compared to the Western population.
Western. So again, it comes like, are we West, are we Japan? We don't know, you know. So that's
so
how
even the side effect profile is more
very
myelosuppression in Japanese and more GI toxicity in European.
So that's kind of designed to be that way. It is also designed like that. Dr. Fahad. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I can tell you that in 1995, Jagannath and myself, we spent 10 days. We spent 10 days in Japan, and where they were using S1 very commonly. But mind you, majority of these patients were getting the side effects. It was not that they were not getting the side effects. So but the results were very good. We were impressed. When I came back, we started using the S1. Our patients, some of them got imported. And the way we could get the side effects, we were not able to really control that. So the dose, but probably the dose which we used at that time was the Japanese dose, and we could not really, nobody could tolerate it.
That's very interesting, sir, because that kind of tells us that we might start doing less dose or we might start doing that. Dr. Shyam, what do you think of? Dr. Shivam, sorry.
So I just don't understand one thing, that when Western data comes to us, we accept it with open arms.
Okay.
And when such a good Japanese data with a good, difference in two curves, we debate. I think we are very close to Japanese population. I've used S1 in 2 patients at a dose of 80 milligram per day. And apart from mucositis, they tolerated the dose well.
So wow, okay, that's,
Vamshi.
Sir. So, Dr. Kumar first.
This is regarding the design. So I agree, we need to see how our patient does, and we want to know what happens to them. But if we take not S1, some other treatment, what kind of benefit we expect? What percentage? See, whatever I am aware of, adjuvant systemic therapy doesn't give you around more than 10%. If you take ECF also, that was perioperative, not adjuvant, that gave a benefit 12 or 13%. That was the absolute difference in the survival. So that way it is, data is good. Again, I repeat, I'm not saying that we don't want some toxicity data here. Otherwise, design-wise, and stomach has always been good in Japanese hand. Take any data. In fact, Western world, they used to not consider the data good till they start seeing it and they realizing that in Japanese hand, or Japanese patient in Japanese hand, I'll change that statement. Japanese patient in Japanese hand, their outcome has always been far better than, and I do agree, Western data is around 20%, that is the 5-year survival of stomach, but that's not the case for Japanese for a long time. So design-wise, I think they're good studies. It was a far bigger studies, nicely done, good follow-up. Question is what the drug will do in Indian population. That is.
So I think I should add one more. Japanese patient, Japanese surgeon, and Japanese medical oncologist.
Yes. Hello.
Sir.
Here I'm saying it is Indian surgeons, Indian hands, and Indian medical oncologists. See, I had a pleasure of working in Japan for 6 months, and Dr. Advani mentioned very clearly that the drug was given, and I realized very much, and I still remember that they were giving these chemotherapy drugs, those S1 alone only, to a very young 75, 80-year-old person, but the relatively younger patients they were giving in combination with drugs, or they were giving the higher dose, as Dr. Dadwani mentioned. The doses are obviously, I mean, I couldn't understand much of their symptoms even during the residency there. But I can tell you one thing, that at least Indian surgeons, most of us are, who do D2 dissections are no less than what they do Japanese. At least we had a lot of work when we were working in Odisha, where there is a huge endemic belt, and we used to operate almost about 50 to 70 patients a year. And we still get a lot of references, and our D2 clearance is second to none. So it's not Japanese hand only, sometimes good time, Indian surgeons of course equally good hand. Only thing what I believe that after in N0 cases today, we either give capox or watch. There where probably the things would come, whether in N3 or N0, or you have given a new adjuvant chemotherapy for a suspect node area. We do laparoscopy in all patients, as Nilesh mentioned. We really don't look into small nodes area. We just see if there is any peritoneal dissemination. If it is resectable, we dissect. And so we do classical. So if the nodes are negative after initial NACT, where there is a role for S1 at all arises, if it is a T3 tumor, if it is classical T2 beforehand and after that there is a good response, I think we can be observing the patients.
So again, this is about the neoadjuvant. So Viraj, you did speak about this study. There was DOS followed by surgery by S1 and surgery followed by S1. Again, in neoadjuvant setting, how many of us would be comfortable using S1? Vashisht?
So never used it, to be honest, and
Fair
very
enough,
reluctant to use patients, any oral therapy, specifically in people who have symptomatic gastric cancer, because in my experience, they find it very difficult to tolerate oral drugs. Secondly, a very small comment on FLOT, and yes, I believe it's standard of care for neoadjuvant, but I really have a tough time having two peripheral neuropathy causing drugs in the adjuvant setting. So I'm sure a lot of people might be doing it very regularly. I struggle in the post-op adjuvant setting, and it predominantly ends up being FOLFOX and occasionally even single agent 5FU. So yeah.
Yeah, I think again it depends on which center you work in, how many cases you see. For we do routinely FLOT and we are pretty comfortable. And again, what we are doing, we should analyze our data. Sometimes you think things are going well, you analyze and you find that it's not so good. So, Dr. Nilesh, my question really now at this point, I mean, would we say that you can replace the 5FU look over in S1? Is that a kind of message that we can take from all these studies, or are they different drugs?
So they are different drugs, and I would not say that as of today, based on a limited experience with this drug, you can replace them. I might still say that you can replace 5FU with capecitabine in many situations, but not with S1. I would like to understand more about this drug.
Absolutely. I think that's a very, very categorical. I'm very happy you made such a categorical statement. Let's not give out the message that S1, 5FU and capecitabine are all the same. They're all different. S1 is different. Does everybody in the panel agree with that? I think with whatever limited data we have, S1 is not the same as 5FU. You cannot use them interchangeably. So that's a good message coming on. And obviously after that the question comes, I showed you the data of S1 docetaxel, there is data of S1 cisplatin. So I guess everyone believes the combination is a doable thing. It is not a very tough thing. Personally, I have never used S1. People have at least some experience. I have zero experience, full disclosure. So this is about this one. Final question, anyone wants to try S1 with radiotherapy? Any thoughts about it? Dr. Sharma is very vehemently shaking her head, so I will take it as that. I think the panel agrees. Again, we don't have data for this. Whether we will use it in future, we don't know. The idea being, again, you cannot simply say, okay, in esophagus they recommend 5FU look over in, so let me just give S1 instead of that. That should not be done. So I think there's no data. That's a simple thing. Sir? So I honestly do not know the answer. Anybody in the panel can take it.
So in the Japanese study, there is adequate data that says that you can combine it. But as we were discussing, in our patient population, we are not comfortable yet, simply because we don't know what the correct dose for our population is.
So I think the question is, tomorrow if we get the drug, will we use it tomorrow? We will not start using it unless we have some data for Indian patients. I think that's one. I don't know how it will work, and I don't know if it is recommended. But we don't know about it in Indian patients.
It has been in use in India for such a long time. Come on. I mean, of course, not the S1, but the Tegafur.
Fair enough. I think we should rely on, I think, TMH or somebody to start off a trial. Anant is sitting there, so Anant, you can start a trial for us on this, using S1 in RT and then see how it works. Right.
Vamshi, in fact, a strong suggestion from three of us who are sitting here is that all the people who matter regarding S1 are in this room. So, we can design a phase 3 trial in the metastatic setting, at least to begin with. Right now.
But you're a busy man, I am a busy man, I am too busy, I will not do it, you do it please. He has agreed on public platform to design
is ready to be the PI.
Okay.
And let's generate Indian data, understand, our pharmacokinetics and how this drug, deals with our metabolism. So,
absolutely.
I think that should be the eventual message before we get off the stage, that we are getting the drug for free for tomorrow.
I'll be happy to join anyone who is doing it. I won't be able to do it myself, but I'll be happy to join. So again, neoadjuvant is something that we have discussed, and S1 again, people are probably willing to try it, though not immediately as a standard of care. Over time, as our experience builds, we should be able to use S1 in the neoadjuvant setting as well. I hope that's a acceptable statement from everybody. Right, coming to metastatic gastric cancer. Now, first line therapies generally, what we know is best line, there is best supportive care, chemo is better than that. Combination chemo is better than single agent. Triplet regimen has a better response, though clinically meaningful benefit may still be lacking. Anant may disagree with me on this, but that's fine. We will do this. Triplets are generally associated with a higher toxicity. Doublets, fluoropyrimidine platinum or irinotecan based products, that's how it is used. Capecitabine is equivalent to 5-FU. Oxali equal or maybe better than cisplatin, right? So, Vashisht, anything in this statements that you think you can argue with, or you think these are all fine?
No, I completely agree. Fantastic. With a small little statement if I can just make here.
Yes.
And that's probably reiteration of what everybody else has stated, is that when a drug comes from the West, we are far more welcoming. When palbociclib came and somebody told us fantastic data, there is neutropenia, we never bothered, started probably prescribing, maybe not on the next Monday, but within the next month. Okay. I think let's keep our eyes open for a drug which has been developed in Asia, has been used extensively. Okay. Yes, hitting the right note in terms of dosages is going to be the key, but let's not just discard it because NCCN does not recommend it.
Okay, I'm not sure I completely agree that all of us are ready to junk anything Indian. I think there are Indian drugs which are so successful in India because we have accepted them. So I will not completely agree with your statement, but yes, point taken, just because NCCN doesn't approve it, we should not reject a drug. Right. I'm so sorry, this has gone haywire, this thing. These are basically all the trials which actually included the cisplatin S1 data as well. Okay, so coming to the panel now. Dr. Nilesh, usual protocol in your practice, do you also do a doublet only or a triplet?
Of course, based on performance status, symptoms, PDL1, many factors, but yes, by and large a doublet is what
by and large a doublet, okay. Viraj, excluding the whole immunotherapy thing, let's leave the immuno aside, the topic will get diverted into it forever and ever. Usual tolerance of therapy in your practice. Are patients generally fit enough to take a doublet also? Forget a triplet. Are they generally fit enough?
Yeah, so Folfox is my usual practice.
Okay.
After modifying dose, usually Folfox is well tolerated.
Okay. And they are reasonably well tolerated? What would be the 80% patients would be able to take the Folfox?
Yes,
80-90%. Okay. Dr. Indu, your practice?
Yeah, so Folfox or Capox.
And tolerance of therapy is reasonably okay?
Reasonably good, yeah.
Okay. Dr. Krishna, your practice, would you also agree with this?
Yes.
Doublet, and most patients do tolerate it. How many patients complete the planned therapy? So, leaving aside the argument that I keep having with Viraj that has to be given till progression or you give a fixed number of cycles, would you plan a fixed number of cycles or would you give it till progression?
Till progression, but unfortunately not tolerated well.
Okay. Dr. Shamila, 8 cycles of Capox, would you stop it? Would you say 12 cycles Folfox? Would you keep giving it?
Whatever little experience I have seen with my patients, by almost 4 or 6 cycles, many of them have problems with and have side effects.
Okay. 4 to 6 is what? Fahad? Would you say that patients are able to keep on going till say 10 months, 12 months?
No, it's easier said than done.
Right.
So definitely not till disease progression.
Okay.
Give them a definite period, 4 to 6 cycles depending on
Dr. Viraj, your data, how many of your patients actually go on till progression? Again, I'm just establishing the background and seeing where we can fit in S1.
So I always stop oxaliplatin at 4 months just like colorectal practice, and continue 5FU,
Okay.
plus or minus biomarker guided therapy.
Okay. So stop the auxiliary, continue only the 5FU leucorin. So something like a colorectal practice.
Something like colorectal.
Something like colorectal you're bringing here. Okay, Dr. Shiva? Your
8 cycles, 8 doses.
8 doses and then you stop, or do you
Then I
give
stop.
maintenance?
Then I stop. And
Okay.
then either 5FU or nothing.
Okay. How many give maintenance on the panel? Dr. Vashisht, many maintenance? Nilesh sir?
Not with chemo, but yes with targeted.
With?
With the targeted agents, yes.
Targeted, no. Forget that. But chemo. Do you continue capstabine as a maintenance, for example?
I do that. I tend to do that.
You tend to do that. Okay. Dr. Indu? Yes. You continue capstabine. And there's no evidence for that. I mean, as far as I am aware, there's absolutely no evidence that says that capstabine should be continued in stomach. But yeah, point taken, sometimes we tend to do that as well. But again, the same question, 5FU leucorin, can we replace it with S1 in a metastatic setting? Dr. Vashisht, starting Monday morning or next Monday morning, whenever the drug comes.
So I probably do not have an answer for this, Vamshi, at this point of time.
Okay.
I'll be very honest. I would want to wait and watch. And it's again not reluctance, it's just my lack of ability to use this drug and be very confident of
So
prescribing
there was a
it tomorrow.
data with S1 cisplatin. Again, the Japanese data, S1 cisplatin versus the irinotecan, S1 cisplatin, S1 irinotecan combinations. So you still would like to hedge your bets and wait for the drug.
For a while.
For a while you want to wait. Absolutely, fine. Dr. Nilesh.
So I think apart from 5FU, we already have 2 other oral drugs. We have capecitabine and we have tegafururacil. I need another strong reason to add a 4th drug, either if I'm convinced that it's better working and or is safer. I'm not yet so convinced right now. So I have 3 options. I probably won't change.
Absolutely. I think that's a very, very valid point that you already have 3 options. The next one should be better or less toxic. Otherwise, you wouldn't really jump the gun and go for it. Viraj.
So S1 has less diarrhea, which is a main problem with capecitabine. So in metastatic setting, I'm going to try outside clinical trial and build up my own practice on this.
Okay. By the way, I'm not aware of this, but Vashisht, you have used some of you have used a few S1. How big are the capsules? Do you have the same problem? Capstabine is big tablets.
No, I don't think so. It's a big capsule.
Okay. Yeah. I'm not aware of it.
But diarrhea can be bothersome. Hand-foot syndrome, so typically in my experience, the settings where I've used it is people who have exhausted routine therapeutic options and the ones who cannot tolerate capecitabine at all.
Okay, fine. Dr. Indu, would you start replacing it? Would you go with S1 cis, or do you think, like Dr. Nilesh says, we have Capox, we have Capsis, we are good?
So we don't have, I don't have personal experience of using in my patients, but if the drug is available, I would like to use it in some patients and see from my experience, maybe at a lesser dose. And as we are discussing, we should have our own clinical trial to have our own data so that many of us can get benefit.
I think it's not a clinical trial, at least a registry data or some data to tell us how the drug works in India. Because otherwise 1 year down the line, we'll say I have used in 5, I have used in 6, I have used in 10 patients, and then we keep debating on how we should keep on. Yes.
Yes. Start using, do we continue it for a year or so?
I personally don't know the answer. Again, the Japanese would probably continue it. Yeah. The trials, what have been done, have included till progression. So practically depends on what you would like to do. So this is the phase 3 trial. Now they used 5FU versus irinotecan cisplatin versus S1. Now I'm not sure 5FU leucorin is the best single arm. It's a continuous infusion. The irinotecan cisplatin is one arm. Again, as far as I know, most of us wouldn't use this as a first line, and S1, and they showed that it was probably better for S1 as compared to fluorouracil alone, and there was a irinotecan plus cisplatin was better than 5FU, but otherwise seems to be working. So again, I will not take too much conclusion from this. It tells me that the S1 also works in the metastatic gastric. Don't know if it's the best or not. There was a spirit.
I think
yes, sir.
The S1 initially, I will never use it and replace the. Initially, it is very difficult to use the S1 just now because of the lack of experience. But I think it's better to use it as a second line. That's where you can get a hang of it as a single agent and then second.
Point taken, sir. I think we will ultimately, most of us will end up using in that way only. We'll start using in second line. The only worry is sometimes in second line, third line, the patient's PS doesn't really permit us to use it as well as we should be doing. And personally in TAS 102, whatever the Indian generic has come, wherever I have used has not worked, mostly because the patients were in PS3 when I used it. They were not the ideal patients where we should have used it. The other trial is the SPIRITS trial, the S1 cisplatin versus S1 alone, again showing a combination is better, but that's kind of logical. Always a combination is going to do slightly better than a single agent. So again, I'm not sure how much we should rely on this. Dr. Viraj, phase 3 study, FLAG study, showing a comparison of cis S1 versus cis 5FU and no difference. Now this is done in MD Anderson, this is not done in US, it's not done in Japan or Asian countries, this is the American population and no difference. So how much should we rely on this versus the Japanese?
So this is the reason this does not exist in NCCN. So as Vashish was saying, we need to try this in our population. Right. Who knows, it is even worse than this.
Okay. Yeah. Personally, cisplatin infusional 5FU, I would say is hard to give. K-pox or something is easier to give. So I'm not sure how much this trial, if you had used a better arm on the opposite side, maybe even it would have been inferior. I'm not sure, but that's what it is. So with this data, how many of us would really want to jump in the first line to give it? Dr. Fahad, Dr. Shivam, anyone would want to use in the first line, or you would want to reserve it like sir is saying in the second or third lines?
I think I would agree with sir.
Okay.
Reserve it for subsequent line, not even sure about second line.
Subsequent, okay. I don't know how much percentage will go into a subsequent line in MGC. That's a pretty bad disease to begin with. Right, this is what NCCN tells you, a whole list of drugs without S1 there, but then again, that's not the reason to just prevent it. So that brings me to my second line. Dr. Indu, how many of your patients would actually go for a second line treatment in stomach, and how many of them would have a performance status 1, 2 or 3 and 4 in your second line practice?
So gastric cancer metastatic setting, usually the performance status is not good. I think that is the main reason when we choose the line of treatment. Second line, I would say maybe 30 to 40%.
30 to 40%
yes.
would go for a second line.
Second line, yes.
Yeah. And majority of them would be PS 1, 2 or 3, 4?
Yeah. Majority will be maybe 3, 4. Right. Yeah.
Okay. Dr. Shamila, Dr. Muvarkin, what's been your practice? Same 30, 40?
Exactly.
30, 40. Dr. Nilesh, percentage going in?
About 50%.
50%.
A big challenge in subsequent line therapy is that these patients have ascites and oral
peritoneal
drugs
disease
are not so well tolerated. So, using this drug as our experience in much later line will actually give us a bad experience. So, that is a caveat.
I think that's the conundrum we are facing. If you give it in the later lines, you're not going to get a good response. If you give it in the first line, you have better options maybe to give it. So, again, we don't really know about it. Right, so this is where I put, and I think at the end of the day, most of us would start using it in some sitting like this, and then slowly build up our experience and then see it. So finally, expected safety profile, none of us have used it. Thoughts on ease of use, again, probably as time goes, we are going to see it being used. Some people have used it, but less than that. So I think the last minute, we should really discuss the elephant in the room. Dr. Amol brought it out, and I don't know who will answer that question. What was the trial done in India, or on what basis we are getting approval? I think that is the question which many of us would be eager to learn, and hopefully by the end of today's discussion, we will have some insight on that. I personally am not aware, so anyone of my panel knows that as to the basis of approval, or any clinical trial done in India, any preclinical trial done in India, or, I'm assuming it's approved, right, on the BDR team. Is it approved, and is it going to be launched in India anytime now soon? Okay, so fine. I think we'll have an offline discussion, as they say, on this. We'll have an offline discussion on this. So, any other comments or questions from the audience? Otherwise, we can stop. It's 14 seconds left. Anyone wants to make a comment?
Beyond gastric carcinoma, it has been used extensively. Squamous head neck. I think Dr. Nagaraj want to say something on that aspect. I think as a sensitizer, it was a big drug before cisplat.
Again, I have no personal use, but I guess.
Yeah, I think it has been used before and published before. Fairly, it's not as ghastly as probably it's being projected out to be. And when you're talking of S1, you have just 2 other molecules which are probably, which should reduce your side effects than otherwise. So there's a considerable experience even in India. I'm sure Dr. Advan and most others most old people must have used it, 90s or early, late 90s, I guess. So it has been used, it has been published, useful, cell cycle specific, before the time.
Sure, I think we will pick up as soon as over time. So I think we have exceeded time also. So thank you everybody, and it was a very interesting discussion by all the panel. I thank all the panelists for their wonderful participation. Thank you.
I think Kshitij, can we call you up here, please? Vashisht, let's do the honors to celebrate Kshitij's birthday. Thank you very much, Kshitij, for coming in spite of, having family commitments on your birthday. Thank you so much. Can we move on to the next panel discussion? Our chairperson is Dr. Nagaraj. Sir, can you please
from
come
here?
up?
From here?
Yeah. Whatever you like.
Yeah, I think we'll do it. Thank you, Purvish, for calling me here as chairperson, and then we move on. We continue in the same vein, but we'll discuss colorectal. And moderator is Dr. Anant Ramaswamy. May I request Dr. Ramaswamy to come on board? Yeah, you may call your panelists as well and conduct the meeting. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like my panelists to come on board. There's Dr. Viraj, Dr. Vamshi, you're also requested to be part of the panel. Dr. Suhas and Dr. Ritu Jain, please. My apologies, Dr. Darshana is also part of the panel. So we have a full house now, and yeah. So I think a lot of the basis was set in the earlier discussion on the basics. So I will ask pointed questions on S1 after presenting some data. So this is just some of the riders on S1. Most of the evidence comes from Southeast Asia, very limited evidence from North America, Europe. That said, the data from Southeast Asia is of a very high quality. And most of the trials with S1 are non-inferiority, and they are a case study in themselves when I went through the literature. And the idea of using S1 is we are not looking at superiority, but we are looking at efficacy to some extent, non-inferior, and safety. I think that should be how we should look at this drug in our scenario. So this is the schema I will go through. We will try and cover as much as possible within 40 minutes. Right. So the first case is a 52-year-old lady who's diagnosed with a right-sided colon cancer, definitely metastatic, good organ function, all her workup is done. So the molecular profile says that RAS is wild, BRAF is mutant, proficient MMR. Now I'll start with my extreme left. Dr. Suhas, what would you do?
So normally with this kind of setting, BRAF mutant and RAS wild type and MMR proficient, we are having some kind of treatment options, but results are not encouraging. Basically, we can use some doublet or triplet type of the chemotherapy, along with maybe we can add the targeted therapy if
This
affordable.
patient is not affordable for targeted therapy.
Sorry?
He is not affordable for targeted therapy.
So in that case, we can use a doublet of the chemotherapy, and maybe definitely with the Folfox or maybe the Folfoxiri.
Okay, what do you normally do? Folfox or Folfiri?
Folfox.
Oh, great. Right. So this is the same scenario transported to S1. This is S1 plus oxaliplatin versus Capox. Capox is one of the acceptable regimes, right? And as you can see here, the primary endpoint of the study was PFS. This is published 10 years back. And the PFS was non-inferior, which was a primary endpoint. And the median OS was also the same. Now, when we have a new drug, we should also look at safety. And this is the safety data. You can just go through it. And largely the things that stand out are that diarrhea is greater with S1 and the myelosuppression is lesser with S1. That is the take-home points, right? This is some of the other data with S1 and oxaliplatin in the first line for colorectal cancers. Now, given this evidence, would you be willing to use S1 with oxaliplatin in advanced colorectal cancers? And I'll ask Viraj that. You have some efficacy, it is safe. Will you consider using it in your scenario?
So if I'm going to use Capox, then yes. Then I'll change to SOX. But I usually do Folfox-CD. That's my practice.
Okay, that kind of hammers my question. Dr. Vamshi, I mean, assuming you use predominantly Capox, would you consider SOX?
So I do use mostly Capox, to be honest, in this setting. Logistic reasons is the major reason. A lot of patients from outside, so port is not always an easy option, port or a central line. So in this option with the data what is there, I mean, I don't see anything really there to make me change my protocol. It's the same, it's non-inferior. So I don't see any reason. If a patient has toxicity with capecitabine going in 2-3 cycles, then I will try S1, though the toxicity is likely to be same. But
so maybe
offhand, using S1 as a replacement for capecitabine for everybody, right now, I wouldn't be doing it.
Okay, so maybe 50-50, please.
With the data what is available to us, and if you feel Capox is being considered, why would you ever consider S1? Because I don't feel any advantages there.
No, I completely agree. I would be open for change, I said.
I think Sahusa, the way to look at that is, in first line colorectal you use Folfiri and Folfox. There's nothing to suggest superiority. It's individual preference. So when you have a third option, you could look at that. I think that's the way to look at it.
So
it is not superior. I think from the beginning I said that this is not going to be a better drug. It's going to be an alternative.
The point of change would have been, let's not consider any drugs, that it would have been IV and a continued admission for 2 days versus a tablet and go on daycare. That could have been considered as change. Here I don't get anything as addition, and most likely all said and done, practically cost will be more than a capecitabine cost. So it will be anyway hard to the pocket. So this data at least doesn't convince me to switch.
Maybe if I had shown the Folfox versus SOX data, maybe that would have made more sense. I just thought a lot of us use Capox, hence I presented this. Yeah, fair enough, fair point. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So Capox, agreed. If we were using it at the right dose, then there is no need to change. But how many of us are able to use it at the right dose? Yeah, capecitabine, really speaking. That is one point. And the second point is sometimes, like you rightly pointed out, there could be difference in toxicity. And if somebody is not able to tolerate one, if you have an option, I think that's the best way to do it.
Fair point. I think that's the way to look at this drug is what I feel as well. Yeah. Okay. So the patient you was started on SOX because you wanted to see how it works. And then he said he's feasible for targeted therapy as well. He's feasible for BEV. right? So this is the soft trial. I think this is one of the trials that even came to prominence some 8-9 years back. They had a primary endpoint of PFS. They compared SOX plus bevacizumab versus FOLFOX plus bev. So Sahu sir, this kind of answers your question. This is FOLFOX versus SOX, right? So again, the primary endpoint was PFS, non-inferiority study, and they showed no differences in outcomes. The primary endpoint was achieved. Second point is safety. Again, somewhat similar. Actually, the dose reductions were similar. The only thing was the diarrhea and HFS were markedly different, right? So now I have shown that there's a phase 3 large non-inferiority study. Ritu ma'am, would you consider using S1?
In this 3 option, the third one I would still wait, but definitely with the SOX and BEV data, if suppose patient has peripheral neuropathy, and if I feel I'm worried about the HFS and peripheral neuropathy, I would definitely would want to try SOX plus BEV, but in very specific patient group. But I would still wait for some experience in the Indian setting.
Dr. Darshana, any thoughts? Yeah,
hello. Yeah, I would also wait for the Indian data because we don't have the clarity of the drug dose.
Okay. So that's a very valid point. I've tried to show the doses in most of the studies here. Largely, it's 40 milligram per meter square twice a day, but they've gone up to 150 milligram also in some studies, and I'll come to that later. So fair point. We'll wait for some Indian data. I agree with that.
Actually, the way they give in metastatic setting and in certain with this monotherapy, the drugs are still the dose is still higher, and the protocol also is 4 weeks on, 2 weeks off. So
Okay. So fair enough. I mean, we got to get used to the drug, I think, is what Dr. Darshana is saying. Fair point. I agree. Okay. So so the next scenario is that you have a sigmoid cancer with limited liver lesions, and your surgical consultant says that he may come up for resection later. Now I'll start with Viraj because he likes FOLFIRINOX in this setting. So Viraj.
So I do all metastatic colorectal FOLFOXIRI.
Okay. Just as a show of hands, who else does that? I'll start with the panel. How many of you in almost all your patients use FOLFIRINOX?
Almost all.
Dr. Darshana? Okay, so there are 2 vigorous no's. Dr. Vamshi?
No, again, only in probably this sort of a setting, or a BRAF alone or something like that, but limited settings.
Dr. Suhas?
20% of the patients.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's a little tough to give all these patients FOLFIRINOX. So, yeah. So this is the data for FOLFIRINOX where, you had...
Anant, I just, since we are on FOLFIRINOX, I just wanted to ask the panelist, and especially Virat, that is he modifying the dose or he's giving the full dose?
Modified.
And especially of the capecitabine also, I want to ask our panelists that are we giving the recommended dose? Because most of the time we are modifying the doses and giving it.
So I think capecitabine, we like I said, in my center we use quite a bit. Almost all of them will go for a dose modification to begin with. I mean, if it is probably coming to 1700 BD, we would be giving 1500 BD. So the dose intensity would be around 85%. It's not too low.
So 1500 milligram per meter square per day?
No. So if it is coming to 1700, say that's around 1000 milligram per meter square per day.
So 1000 milligram per meter square per
BD.
day?
BD.
Okay, so 2000, basically 2000.
That's a recommended
Yeah.
dose.
So I think most of us have agreed that 2.5 gram per meter square per day is not happening in our scenario. And that clinical practice has told us enough. So for our setting, I think 2 gram per meter square should be considered standard, and there's data from the West to say that. So, I think,
that's why I said so. That's
fair enough.
So Dr. Purvish raised that point that are we giving the full dose? So,
So 2.5 I think is tough. We are not using that at all, but I agree that there is the initial trials started with 2.5 gram per meter square.
So again, Anant, just to answer ma'am's point, in FOLFIRINOX, I don't use I push bolus 5. I use only infusional. I don't know, Dr. Viraj.
Correct. No bolus and irinotecan at 135, not 150.
Okay, fair. Yeah. Okay. So there's actually some data for S1, irinotecan and oxaliplatin as well, and this is called the Tyrox regimen. It's very small data, but they use it in 43 patients with colorectal cancer, and they found an overall survival of around 20 months. And the toxicities actually were manageable. I was a little surprised at this, but the incidences of neutropenia, stomatitis, diarrhea are somewhat less than FOLFIRINOX. There's no direct comparison, of course. So assuming S1 is available, Dr. Suhas, would you consider using it, because it obviates the need for a PICC line or a central line? You have some data to use it. Would you consider it?
In this particular setting, I won't be going ahead with, because this is a potentially resectable where we really want to operate it later on, and with the limited data, I won't be comfortable.
Okay, Viraj, yeah?
No, I would not, because it's the same reason we would not use capecitabine in a triplet, because it has more diarrhea. So for triplet with fluoropyrimidine and irinotecan and oxaliplatin is no. 5-FU infusional has far less diarrhea, and hence we do it.
Fair enough. I mean, this is just the data that is there if you wanted to draw a parallel, but fair point, yeah. For those of us who use irinotecan as first line, there is enough data for irinotecan also, predominantly phase 2 in the first line. As you can see, most of the PFS hovers around 8 to 11 months, which is what you would expect with 5-FU based or capecitabine based. Right?
In question I have, Anant.
Yeah, please.
Is Capiri is not well accepted. How is SCD accepted? It has more diarrhea.
Okay. So, anyone else would like to answer that, or I'll answer that?
Please go ahead. I don't know the exact answer.
Okay.
I know that Capiri is not a good drug.
Yeah.
And hence CD should not be.
Yeah, so fair enough. So there is a very large study from Southeast which says that FOLFIRI and Capiri are equivalent in terms of outcomes and tolerance. So we use a lot of Capiri because of obvious issues of logistics, and we use 1700 milligram per meter square of Cap with 200 of irinotecan, and it is reasonably tolerated.
200 per meter square.
Oh,
irinotecan.
Yes, 200 plus 1700. It's well tolerated. So, and there's data. This is a Lancet paper, and it came from Japan and China, if I'm not wrong, and it was exactly the same.
I've started using it because of the Ayushman Bharat. That gives me more money, to be frank, and it's much easier, no admissions. So, and I was skeptical, but I found using it more than 10 patients, it is not that bad, and you do not get diarrheas as you think you would get, and the doses are not that compromised. So I think most of us assume things. To cut things a little bit, change if you have time. Regarding Folfox or the 5-FU way of doing it, they have two questions. Are we still all practicing bolus, and should it be a high time to take away the bolus and just give the infusional 5-FU? Point number one. Point number two is, should we be doing the low dose leucovorin, because cost of the protocol is the highest with the leucovorin part of it, and there is data to tell leucovorin dose does not matter. So two things, anyone can take it.
So I knew the second question was coming because Sahusa asked it. He's one of the proponents of this, and I think it's high time we shifted. We have not, sir. Anyone else who shifted?
So we discussed this for a patient. Leucovorin only modulates the bolus version because it works in a different way. Infusional 5-FU, so as far as my knowledge goes, we don't have evidence that it modulates even that. And hence, if you omit bolus, there is a strong rationale to omit leucovorin as well.
So we are not using the bolus now. So modified Folfox 7 is what we are using without the bolus.
Because the bolus only gives toxicity, no efficacy at all. And so I think, because I have been doing low dose leucovorin for last 4 or 5 years now, and there is data to that aspect. NCCN told it because of shortage of things, so we took it opportunity. You decreased cost by 25%.
Yes. I completely agree with you on that, and it should be adopted. There's enough rationale, but I don't think most of us have done it, and that's our flaw, I guess. So in the second line, FOLFIRI versus Siri, or sorry, Iris, there is, my bad. So, there is enough data in the second line. The primary endpoint was PFS, and there was no difference. And the toxicity profile also was as per previous. There was more neutropenia with the 5-FU based, and a greater incidence of diarrhea, fatigue with the S1. So, assuming your patient has progressed over Folfox, Ritu madam, would you consider using S1 plus irinotecan?
Yeah,
With this available data, I would be tempted
Dr.
to.
Darshana?
Yes.
Yeah, and also I think based on the discussion in the gastric cancers, likely we will also use it in later lines and then develop our, expertise in this drug. Yeah.
Practically speaking, it will help you because you use K-pox because you don't want to put a central line. It helps you can give iris, if because again, obviates the whole need for the line.
Fair enough. Yeah. Yeah. It's a little ease of administration, I think, is the key here. Yep. There is limited data for combination with anti-EGFR also. There's only 2 of these are fully published papers. The Jacro is actually, I couldn't find the full manuscript, but what it says is that it is feasible when you combine SOX with cetuximab or IRIS with panitumumab. So I've just shown you a snapshot. If you want to look at it again, please go ahead. In your practice, would you consider using this? Dr. Darshana, maybe we can start with you.
Yes, once we know how to give the S1, it would be nice to give it with EGF, the BEV or something. It would be more better.
Okay. But would you wait for an Indian data or say, okay, this is enough?
No, I would still wait for the Indian data.
I agree.
I think, Anant, anecdotally, I think if you can find out in practice, a lot of people are using, any of the other tegafurs with bevacizumab, use tegafur with cetuximab, and I think it's just going to be one of those.
Yeah, so I personally think that these 2 drugs should not be equated, tegafur and S1.
I completely agree.
So I would, if we want to wait for Indian data, then we should wait for it. I mean, that's the way I look at it. Yeah. Okay. So this is slightly different intent. This is a rectal cancer which is to be given neoadjuvant chemoradiation. And it was a T2N1 disease. All the workup is done. He's planned for Cape RT, right? Now, this is something I couldn't find too much data on. I found only 2 large studies. One was 37 patients where they looked at the safety. And the safety was that, the major adverse events were diarrhea, but it was very well tolerated, S1. And it was a weight-based dosing where they went up to 120 mg. The other data was a match pair analysis where they used 24 patients, very small numbers, and again the endpoint was safety, and largely it was again well tolerated. There was actually lesser diarrhea with S1 than capecitabine, which I kind of found surprising, and the neutropenia was more with S1. So same question, and maybe Viraj, you can take this. There is some data, would you use it? Okay, I'll take that as a no and, maybe take one more opinion. Yeah, Dr. Darshana.
So S1 is known to cause more diarrhea.
I know.
That and the radiation-induced enteritis.
Which is why I found this a little surprising, In this, the diarrhea was more with CAPE. Yeah.
The dose also is 80 to 120.
Here it is 80. Anant, the reason why S1 was invented was to reduce the diarrhea and to put oxo. But so in all the trials that you showed
most
before
of the
this
colorectal trials, diarrhea is more. That
except
is my
this one.
understanding. Except this one. So I was following the discussion.
So what is oxo doing there?
Yeah, there's something there, but diarrhea was more. And HFS was left, myelosuppression was more. This was my understanding of the, tolerance bit. So yeah.
In some papers, it was mentioned that they invented this S1 because in Japan they don't have many medical oncologists. So
that is correct. That is correct. Absolutely correct. That is quoted in the Japanese guidelines as well. So that's a very good point. They didn't have med-oncs. Yeah. So yeah. Again, adjuvant setting. You have a hepatic flexure primary, non-metastatic, and as a T4N1, he was stage 3 cancer, and he was planned for K-pox. Simple. This is the data. So in Japan, they do not use a combination as adjuvant. They still use a single agent, either 5-FU-LV or capecitabine. And so here they use capecitabine versus S1. And the primary endpoint was DFS. It was a large trial, almost 1,600 patients. And the primary endpoint of non-inferiority was not met, right? This is the first analysis, and on the updated analysis, both capecitabine, S1 was not non-inferior to capecitabine. So in the adjuvant setting, I would be wary. This is the toxicity profile. Even though you were able to give more S1, the dose intensity, the dose reductions was also less with S1, but they were the survival endpoints were not met. Any comments, Dr. Vamshi?
So again, you have not, it has not established non-inferiority, you would probably not give it. The only reason again is look at the side effect profile, there's less of HFS, similar diarrhea probably, so then maybe if you cannot give capstabine, you would use it as an alternative at the best, but otherwise no.
Yeah.
I'm actually more curious, I don't know if you're asking that question, how much S1 will we give if we give it? Will we give the 3-month versus 6-month debate in this?
I specifically made sure that debate will not enter this question. So, yeah, Dr. Sahu.
If you look at this chart and our adjuvant protocol and look at the hazards of 1.22 and confidence interval just missing the significance. It's 1.0 to 1.5. If it is 1.1, then it would have been a significantly better capcitabine and the S1 would have been inferior.
Okay.
So would you look at statistics apart and just missing the non-significant thing means it would have been inferior actually if I look at it.
Correct.
So would you even consider it on an adjuvant setting?
I won't. I'm very clear on this.
Yeah.
And there's one more study, I'll just go. So they also commented on possible reasons and they've not expanded on this in the manuscript, but these were the reasons. They apparently did a day 28 5FU metabolite levels and they found that the metabolite levels were less with S1. So they've tried to delve into reasons and likely, this is the reason for that. So maybe in the adjuvant setting, I think we should not go this way. There's another trial where in Japan, Tegafur is considered one of the standards, where they compared it with S1 plus oxaliplatin. So the first analysis was a safety analysis and they said it is safe. Obviously when you're using true drugs, your side effects will be more, so that is fine, but it was acceptable. Completion rates were good. Any thoughts, Dr. Ritu, on the side effect profile? So SOX obviously had more side effects, but in your practice when you give Folfox or Capox, would you be happy with this kind of side effect profile?
No, not really.
Okay. Which particular side effect really hits you hard on this?
HFS.
Okay. The HFS was only 2%.
The neutropenia is
but,
far higher.
But if I look at the side effect, it's all paper toxicities. Look at the neuropathy grade 3, which is significant.
Okay,
so it's
so
around 4.5.
my bad. These are all, these are all grades.
So my point is, and grade 3 is only 5%, which I feel all of us have accepted. Even the neutropenia, all grades of 60. Would it be significant? Very.
So important point there. I think 5% you said neuropathy, right? 4.6.
Grade 3, last one, neuropathy grade 3 is
4.6, right? Yeah, 5%. So the reason for that is look at the dose of oxaliplatin. They've used 100 milligram per meter square, and this is the reason they used it. They used a lower dose than 130 milligram per meter square to reduce the neuropathy. Okay, and that is why it is only 5%, right? Now, obviously, that might have had a bearing on the outcomes because there was no difference in survival.
And the other arm did not have oxaliplatin.
Yeah. So in more ways than one, this is not a regimen to be used with the current available evidence. Right? I mean, that's the point I was trying to make. You reduce the dose, you probably reduce the side effects, but the effect also likely goes down, right?
The tablet is not working as well as
Yes. So then definitely in the adjuvant setting, I think we should think more than twice.
Even in Japan, it's not the standard of care.
Yes. I mean, this is all their trial. I mean, anything and everything that we are speaking of is Southeast Asian data. So this, I think, is a no for everyone. I think we'll be unanimous on that. Just one thing on the tolerance, since that, because most of the data I have shown is Southeast Asian. This is actually from the Dutch group. They did a very simple study of 160 patients where the primary endpoint was HFS. And there are two things here. They used capecitabine versus S1 and the dose of S1 was 30 milligram per meter square. And as you can see, the HFS was markedly less. Viraj, any thoughts on this?
Yes, so this is what exactly Western population is doing. They cut down the S1 dose. Then of course the big question mark comes whether you will get the same efficacy like the Japanese. So in India, if we are going to use, I think so this is the schedule we'll all use, 2 weeks on, 1 week off, starting with 30 per meter square.
Yeah, and I think this is also an indicator of how they use capecitabine. They have used 2.5 gram we would not
We
use
will
it.
never use
So then is the same thing relevant in our scenario is doubtful. Dr. Vamshi? Yeah.
So again, after that, after 2.5 of capstobine, the diarrhea is still more in the S1 group. That's difficult to understand, you know.
Yeah, no, but I agree with you. But across the colorectal cancer trials, at least, this seems to be the major dose limiting thingy. So, you know, that ways. Yeah.
2 out of 40% dose reduction still with the low dose of S1.
Yes, yes. But look at the dose reductions in CAPE.
But you're giving 2.5.
Yeah, fair point. Yeah. Agreed. I completely agree with that. This is just data from our institute, which we had published a couple of years back. I've shown this mainly because HFS is a problem in our patients. Would you all agree? Dr. Suhas, maybe?
Yes.
Yeah. So this is both 5U and CAPE, so I can't exactly divide patients here. But grade 2 and grade 3 was almost 25%. You know, so, you know, in patients who have significant HFS, maybe you can consider, you know, replacing with S1 in the appropriate scenario. So to me, you know, in summary, I think one, pharmacogenomics, and this was mentioned in the earlier panel as well. You know, the two reasons for the difference in Western and our data has been, as in at least supposed reasons, has been the CYP polymorphisms and the body surface area. We don't know what the appropriate dosing in our patients is. Is 30 milligram per meter square enough? I don't know. But is it going to affect efficacy? You know, I'm not sure as well. I think the lack of efficacy in the adjuvant setting is actually, you know, a very good idea for doing a trial in India with correct doses of oxaliplatin. I think they made a mistake on reducing the doses in the trial from Japan. And so my interpretation for usage, assuming this drug is available, and I'm open to corrections, is that in the first line, I think I would be comfortable using it. In the second line and in combination with BEV, I would be comfortable using it, but I would not use it as with FOLFIRINOX substitution, as NACT-RT, or in the adjuvant setting. That's my thought process. I'll quickly take opinions starting from Dr. Suhas. Anything you would like to add to this?
No, I do agree with all these things.
Oh, that is so nice to hear. Okay. Viraj?
That is what we discussed earlier also.
Yeah, correct. No, I agree. It's a nice summary.
Okay. Dr. Vamshi?
Yeah, agreed with all the points. I think you have summed it up pretty well. And my only question really, or the discussion for the panel would be, supposing we often do that if patient has capstobine, bad toxicity, we do a DPD, it is still not mutated, you generally tend to change it to a Tegafur or something and continue. That's one thing we do. Would we be comfortable doing that with S1? I don't know the answer, so I don't know, anyone can.
So, madam, would you like to answer that? I mean, just, it's pure philosophy right now, because the drug is not used and we have limited usage.
Yeah,
but still, would you consider that?
I really don't know the answer. Okay. But as you said, like, I see this as an oral drug. Already we have 3 drugs in colorectal setting. So I see as an oral drug, and I was actually looking forward for a better toxicity profile. Because HFS, as you said, it is very debilitating. We may talk about overall survival, PFS, but to me, a quality of life, HFS, in a day-to-day practice is very important. So the drug is still like, I'm still wait and watch, you know, for this drug.
Dr. Darshana, so in answer to Dr. Vamshi's specific question, patient has HFS with capecitabine. Let's make it even more complicated, curative setting, and I've shown you that S1 may not work. Will you substitute with S1? Or you will stop capecitabine completely? I know it's a little bit of a on the spot
forgetting
question.
5FU.
Hang
There
on,
is
hang on.
our good friend
Let's go one
5FU.
by one. Let's go one by one. Maybe. Okay, so fair enough, maybe. Dr. Suhas?
So in that setting, definitely we can try, because the drug is going to be, if it is going to be available, we can try and we can generate the data for that.
Okay. Viraj?
5FU.
Easy
Infusional
one.
5FU.
Fair enough. Dr. Vamshi?
Yeah, again, 5FU or Tegafur is what I personally not a big fan of Tegafur either. So either 5FU is what I would do, or I would just go ahead with something like an ionotican or something.
The one thing when we answer as 5U is that it does involve a port or a PICC. Okay, so that is one thing. And while these trials which I showed have been negative, clinically those differences are not that huge. So if you still want to maintain patient, you know, compliance, you may consider, that's my thought process, but you know, we can discuss this. Yeah. With that, I'll take any final comments from the panel or the audience, anyone. Anything that they would like to add on S1? Yeah, Rohit, please.
On cardiotoxicity of S1, any data about that? Because if you look at capecitabine, 5 to 8% cardiotoxicity, infusional 5-FU 5 to 8% cardiotoxicity. Anything like that in this?
Okay, so I didn't look at this. I didn't look at this at all. So I don't know. But in the 6 to 8 papers that I went through, cardiotoxicity was not one of the common side effects. That much I can tell you. But I don't know the exact incidences. No.
Can I take?
And the other thing is, just as a correction, 5 to 8% is a gross overestimation of the cardiotoxicity with 5-FU or CAPE. In high risk patients, it's 5 to 8. In actual, across the board, it's 1% or less. The exact number escapes me, but it's 1% or less. We've all seen these patients, and that I agree with you completely. But it's not 5 to 8 is my understanding.
Because supposing adjuvant setting, if someone develops a cardiotoxicity of 5-FU, then there is practically no choice of anything. So
yeah, fair point. So we occasionally re-challenge under observation. That is not standard, but that is one option. But I don't know any great options otherwise. Yeah, fair point. Yeah, please.
So the cardiotoxicity because of fluoropyrimidine is because of the catabolic product. When it goes to the liver, DPD breaks it down, and there is F-alanine. I just read it up last week. And that is the one which causes HFS, neuropathy, and cardio. So if you are blocking DPD, you are reducing this beta-alanine, and hence you have less HFS, less neuro, and less cardio, and more of GI and more of bone marrow. So S1 actually will have a less cardiotoxicity, less neuropathy, neurological side effect, and less HFS. That is the reason.
It was not mentioned as a common side effect, Rohit. That much I am sure, but incidence I don't know.
Thank you.
If nothing else, then I think we've saved a little time. Thank you for the panelists. I think lovely panel. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, please.
Thank you, Dr. Anant. That was lovely.
Yeah.
Faculty, I just want to just mention here one point. Not for the stomach or not for the other disease. What about gallbladder S1?
Okay. So
भैया इनमें तो सब कुछ है gallbladder में क्या करेंगे?
So Gemsys plus S1, big data from Japan.
Yes.
They showed us again. Was it not
OS
benefit 15 months? No. So
double digit.
I mean that's partially your answer, but I still have to find the dose, and I'm not sure why is there so much difference between Western and our data. Something somewhere we are missing, and that, as I think all of them pointed out, experience will tell us.
We just had a discussion about capacitabine in GB. So S1 is going to be used in GB again. So we have to do something about this S1 in GB. That's what my point is.
Yeah, fair point. Fair point. Yeah. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Anant. It was lovely. We move on to the next one.